Good evening, everyone. Bonsoir. I'm Victor. I work for the French Institute. Welcome to the French Institute, and thank you all for joining us today. We are delighted to be here tonight with Neige Sinno to celebrate with her the translation into English of her book, Sad Tiger. Neige Sinno has studied French and American literature before writing several fiction novels such as La Vie des Rats and Le Camion. Published in 2023, Triste Tigre has received numerous prestigious awards, including the 2023 Prix Femina, the Concours des Lycéens, the Prix littéraire du Monde, and the Prix Les Inrecuptibles, as well as the Choix Goncourt here in the UK in 2024. We are also joined tonight by Lauren Elkin, who has written about art, culture, and literature. Her book Flâneuse was recognized by the New York Times Book Review. Apart from her work as a writer, she has also translated several books, such as Simone de Beauvoir's previously unpublished novel, The Inseparables. Her latest novel, Scaffolding, has been published last year. After 20 years in Paris, she now lives in London. The event is organized with the essential support of Seven Stories Press, who published the English version of Sad Tiger, and who we most wholeheartedly thank. A big thank you to Catherine Taylor. We would also like to extend special thanks to Camille Laurence, for being here with us tonight and representing the Académie Goncourt tomorrow. Without further ado, enjoy the evening. Lauren, Neige, the floor is now yours.
Okay, we're on, we're live. This is a very live microphone. Okay. Welcome, Neige. Thank you, everyone, for coming out tonight. It's a real pleasure to be here and to be talking about this really powerful and really special book, which I hope at least some of you have already read. I know it's just come out in English, but it's been out in French for a little bit now, so, you know. Yeah, I think, well, maybe I'll do like a little preamble and then we'll read. Does that sound good? Just a, small introduction. Sad Tiger, Triste Tigre is a chilling account of its author's systemic rape by her stepfather over a period of 7 or so years, when she was 7 until the age of about 14, with reference to texts like Lolita, or Virginia Woolf's accounts of her own abuse by her older half-brothers, or fiction by Toni Morrison and Mary Gateskill. Sad Tiger is about an adult destroying his stepdaughter's childhood, but it's also a narrative about narrative itself, how we write about what happens to us. The existential challenge of the book can be summarized in a line from Sartre's book on Genet, as quoted by Didier Eribon, and here quoted by Neige Sinno: "What matters is not what is done to us, but what we do with what is done to us." Sad Tiger won the Prix Femina in 2023 and was shortlisted for the Prix Goncourt and is now available in English, translated by Natasha Lehrer. It is deeply disturbing reading, but also deeply compelling. Welcome, Neige Sinno.
Oh, thank you.
Yeah. So do you want to read in French first? Yeah?
Sure.
Okay,
yeah.
Cool.
Thank you. Thank you all for coming. I'm going to read the first page in French and then maybe in English too.
Yeah, okay.
And we'll see. Chapitre 1. Portrait. Portrait de mon violeur. Car à moi aussi, au fond, ce qui me semble le plus intéressant, c'est ce qui se passe dans la tête du bourreau. Les victimes, c'est facile, on peut tous se mettre à leur place. Même si on n'a pas vécu ça, une amnésie traumatique, la sidération, le silence des victimes, on peut tous imaginer ce que c'est, ou on croit qu'on peut imaginer. Le bourreau, en revanche, c'est autre chose. Être dans une pièce, seul avec un enfant de 7 ans, avoir une érection à l'idée de ce qu'on va lui faire, prononcer les mots qui vont faire que cet enfant s'approche de vous, mettre son sexe en érection dans la bouche de cet enfant, faire en sorte qu'il ouvre grand la bouche. Ça, c'est vrai que c'est fascinant. C'est au-delà de la compréhension. Et le reste, quand c'est fini, se rhabiller, retourner vivre dans la famille comme si de rien n'était, et, une fois que cette folie est arrivée, recommencer. Et cela pendant des années. N'en jamais parler à personne. Croire qu'on ne va pas vous dénoncer, malgré la gradation dans les abus sexuels. Savoir qu'on ne va pas vous dénoncer. Et quand un jour on vous dénonce, avoir le cran de mentir ou le cran de dire la vérité, d'avouer carrément. Se croire injustement puni quand on prend des années de prison. Clamer son droit au pardon. dire que l'on est un homme, pas un monstre. Puis, après la prison, sortir et refaire sa vie. Même moi, qui ai vu cela de très près, du plus près qu'on puisse le voir, et qui me suis interrogée pendant des années sur le sujet, je ne comprends toujours pas.
Portrait of my rapist. Because for me too, when it comes down to it, the thing that's most interesting is what's going on in the perpetrator's head. With victims, it's easy. We can all put ourselves in their shoes. Even if you've not experienced it, the traumatic amnesia, the bewilderment, the silence of the victim is something we can all imagine, or think we can. The perpetrator, on the other hand, is a different story. Being in a room alone with a 7-year-old child, getting an erection from imagining what's about to happen, saying the words to make the child come closer, putting the erection in the child's mouth, coaxing the child to open wide. That is fascinating. It's beyond comprehension. And after it's over, getting dressed, going back to family life as if nothing has happened. And once the madness has taken hold, doing it again and again for years, never telling a soul, truly believing there will never be a denunciation, despite the steadily intensifying sexual abuse. Knowing there will never be a denunciation. And then one day when there is a denunciation, daring to lie, or daring to tell the truth, daring to admit it straight off, still believing, after being sentenced to several years in prison, that the punishment is unjust, proclaiming the right to be pardoned, insisting this is a man, not a monster, and then, after being released from prison, making a fresh start. I have seen this up close as it is possible to see it. I have turned this question over in my mind for years, and still I do not understand. So yeah, that's an interesting place to start. Do you want to go right into the other reading, or would you rather talk for a bit and then
Maybe
pause? Yeah, okay.
Yeah. So that's the first
yeah.
page. It's the beginning of the book.
Fucking hell. Pardon my French. So much of the book is, in terms of the way it's constructed and in terms of the sort of narrative line of it, it's a book very much aware of itself as a book. It's a constructed narrative that's thinking about narrative, what perspective to adopt, what the reader wants, what's most interesting. I wonder, how, when you're coming to sit down to write a book like this, to translate that kind of experience to the page, why is that the place to start?
I think I needed the distance because it's so devastating to talk about this. I need something. I need that. I need the reader to be conscious that it's a story. It's a life story, and it's true, and it's nonfiction, but it's a story. It's something that I'm building up. It's something that I'm trying to tell. It's something that is going to be built up in the process of reading. It's not only a horrible story that you can't take a step back. I want the reader to be able to take a step back almost all the time. So I think it was not completely conscious, but when I realized that I was going to be able to write that book in that way, it made the book possible. With that distance, with that... it's also playful. It's pretty strange to say this after reading that first page, but the idea that the reader is participating in this construction or conscious of this construction all the time, it makes the book less dark, or I don't know if it makes it less dark, but it builds up a place of reading that is not only darkness, it's also something, because it's something enjoyable for me as a reader, to see the structure, see how it's made, see the questions. So I wanted to share this with the reader, and it's something completely opposite to the nature of the story. So when I wrote those first pages, that I realized I was going to be able to weave together different textures, something very heavy and very dark, but something light also, which is the process of building up that story and that relationship with the reader. That's how I decided to write the book. And it would be a completely different book if it was only the story of that poor little girl.
Oh yeah, completely. I mean, and that's something that recurs in the book that, you know, we can come to at some point, or we can talk about it now, whatever. This idea of like literary taste, you know, literary style, like what's the most literary way to write trauma or to write this kind of abuse. But to stick with maybe with this idea of perspective for a little bit, I think it's part of what makes the book so special is that you have all these different textures that you're weaving together. There are different like colors, like kind of thematic colors that you're bringing together, so it's not all just like poor little girl. And for that, I think that's part of why the book sort of is as impactful as it is. But you go sort of, you're so committed to this idea of really interrogating perspective that there's even a moment that I have written down here to quote where you say, "I keep wondering if I should say I to make it clear that this little girl is also me, or should I say she, the little girl?" And then this is what I underlined: "I don't know what works better for you. Maybe it's more realistic if I say she." Like to invite the reader in to that degree where, the reader's almost co-creating the text with you, I found really striking.
Yes, I'm very conscious of the fact that the way I'm going to tell that story is going to make up a different story. If I say I and if I say she, it's completely different. It's a question of linguistics and of style, but it's also an existential question. How am I going to tell this? How am I going to put words on something I know from the first page I'm not going to understand? And you're not going to understand. So I wanted to make all this visible because it's part of, I'm not sure it's part of the trauma, I think it is. It's part of the trauma that has been done to me, that something unsayable, a story that I'm not going to be able to tell. So my revenge is also to use all my creativity to fight this monster. And the monster is not my stepfather. The monster is this thing I'm not going to be able to tell. So yes, it's very strange. Because I did this as a fiction, using she. So I know it's very different. But I'm not sure what kind of difference it is. I know it's different because I've experimented this. And I think this is interesting. I try to experiment stuff in the process of writing and reading the book, and I'm not completely sure. I'm never completely sure what's better, and I'm going to try for a while to say I and see how far we can go, and then if I need she, we'll try also this. We'll try many different things. But we know from the beginning, all those things I'm going to try, I'm going to use, it's never going to be enough. So it's a strange project. From the beginning, I know it's never going to be enough. There's a melancholy from the beginning for me in that project. But at the same time, I know I'm doing something forbidden. I'm talking about this. It's forbidden to talk about this. It's very daring. So this gesture of trying, it's important enough to make me feel some joy. And I think I'm sharing joy. It's weird. It's a strange feeling I think I share with the reader. We're going into some very strange and not usual territory.
Yeah, there's definitely a lightness of touch there. I think you call it like the survivor's joy, or the joy of the survivor towards the end of the book. But the reader shares that sort of. I mean, it's very impressive. I know at one point you say, like, people call me brave. I don't know if I'm brave. Maybe I'm brave, or I think you say you are brave. But like the narrative itself, like it just goes kind of fearlessly. You know, like let's talk about blowjobs for a while. Let's just talk. You know, no sparing, no like sensitivities. We're just going to talk about what a blowjob is, what it is for a child to give a blowjob, and then that leads you into sort of passages where you think about detail and the importance of the detail in describing what it is for a child to give a blowjob. I wonder, I mean, that I wasn't sort of going to get to that till a bit later, but it's really the most pressing question that I have as a reader of this book, as someone who's really interested and committed to life writing and autobiographical writing, is towards the end of the book you say something like, why should fiction be the domain of the unsayable? Like, why can't autobiography be the place where we can say I and kind of lay claim to the things that we're not supposed to say? I wonder if you want to talk a bit more about the distinction between fiction and autobiography.
Sure. It's completely unresolved in the book. It's an internal fight. I think I have different... I think about this in different angles, and sometimes I defend my book as non-fiction, and I ask the reader, what kind of book do you think you're reading? What is this? And I judge this book, this genre of autobiographical nonfiction as subculture, as something inferior to real literature, which is what I was planning to do in the first place when I was younger and when I started to write, and even when I started to write this book. And so there's this question for me and for the reader: do you think this experience of reading this book, do you think this is literature, or do you think this is something else? And if it's something else, is it less than what you usually call literature? It's a question that is unresolved. And at the end of the book, I tried to change my perspective and recognize that I've been through something intense and important writing this book, reading this book, because when you finish writing, you read this. And I know that there is a literary experience here that I haven't felt. And I couldn't have built this in fiction. So how am I going to name this? If it's not literature, if it's not art, what is it? And I'm okay to give it another name. At some point, it's not important. What is important is what I've been through and what you will experience when you read the book. And I know it's not. I couldn't even describe. I don't know how you would describe that kind of experience. It is strange. It's a book that is... It's about storytelling and the impossibility of storytelling, but it's also a book that is built on being very conscious that it's about emotional truth. From the beginning, this first page that we read, we take a distance because we know that it's a story and I'm making this visible. but it's on purpose that it's violent, and I'm not trying to behave as if I didn't know. I know it's hard. I know there's lots of pain in telling that kind of stories. It's mine, and it's the story of so many other people. And if you haven't been a victim of abuse, you know someone who has. So I am not. I'm trying to be very honest on this. And so the question of non-fiction is also a question of being aware all the time of this emotional roller coaster that we are going. We've been. It's an adventure, and that's the distance comes and goes. It's also because I want to go somewhere very deep that I need this lightness that we were talking about in the beginning. We need to breathe. We need to take a step back to go deeper into the place where I want to go. And the place where I want to go is very straightforward. We need the details. We need to talk about, not to talk, and it's very different, it's a book. It's just you and me. It's not something we can talk about in front of people. And I'm very aware of this when I write the book. I couldn't have done this in another medium. Maybe, I don't know. But I don't think I could. Because the proposal is that I'm going to try to make a very big effort to bring you into this conscience, to not explain, but to show, to share with you what's going on in that head. And my hypothesis to do this is that you're going to be alone reading that book, completely vulnerable, and in this very special relationship that we have of being very lonely and very alone. So then I can talk about things I wouldn't say in front of people. I can talk about, what it really means for me to have been a victim of child abuse. And it means that I did many blowjobs to a grown man when I was a 7-year-old girl. And if I don't say the details, I'm talking abstractly, and I don't want that. I want to go deep into trying to tell this, trying to explore. But I really need the very special relationship of someone who's reading something in silence. In the moment I'm writing the book, because I also had no idea it would have so many readers, and now I think I'm glad there's this social conversation, and people use that book as a not an excuse, but like a bridge to bring that conversation with friends and even sometimes family, and to have those conversations. We've had a hard time building that context to make this possible.
Yeah. There are a couple of very ironically funny moments in the book where you say, I hope too many people won't read this. And then toward the end you're like, well, maybe no one will read this, and I'll just get asked onto a radio show and I'll have to put this in really simplified words and everyone will forget about it, which clearly has not been the case.
I know.
So.
But when I wrote the book, I knew I could see its power. I could see the possibility of this book being a small bomb exploding in your head and exploding in the society I was throwing it to. But it was also possible that no one was going to read it. And it was very close. I received many rejection letters and I had a hard time finding a publisher. So this is very strange also about someone writing a book in a very isolated and complete loneliness, which gave me a lot of freedom. Like I had no idea what was going to happen with the book. So I think the irony and all the stuff that is quite daring and provocative, I had no idea it would be judged by people. It's really me and the reader, this hypothetical, mostly friendly reader. Mostly like, and it's not me. It's really someone, it changes in the book. At times it's a friend, at times it's, there's a companionship I'm trying to build up with the reader. But I'm also conscious that this is an illusion, and the reader could be hostile, maybe, or could think I'm going too far, or could start judging, or could start to be an enemy. So I'm trying to be conscious of so many things at the same time when writing. But when it becomes obvious that the reader is starting to become my enemy, trying to judge, or I'm putting myself in the position of justifying myself or defending myself, I make it obvious in the book and I try to change. At some point I say, oh no, I don't want to go this way, so I'm going somewhere else.
Yeah, it is really interesting to see you accommodating the reader. I mean, I've definitely never read a book before, and I've read a lot of books that include in the middle of it a list of reasons not to write the book. Like, that's really astonishing. You're just like going along and suddenly you're like, reader, you probably agree with me. Like, it's very likely that the reader is on your side and thinks that what you're describing is horrible. So what's the point of sharing another story of abuse? Like, we all agree abuse is bad. And yet, you have this, you ask à quoi bon, like several times over the course of the book, à quoi bon, à quoi ça sert? So, you say, like, I'm not interested in writing as therapy. So what sort of, I think there is an ambivalence that goes throughout the whole book that you don't quite resolve, but I wonder if that's something that you want to speak to a little bit.
It's strange because it's something, I think this kind of distance, this list is something I've learned from studying postmodern literature. It could be an artifact, it could be a game. And it is, in a way. But it's completely true, also. I have many reasons, I have a complete list of reasons that make this book undesirable, that makes this book almost impossible. So it's very paradoxical. And the book is built on paradoxes? What's the plural? Paradoxes? Because all the time I'm torn between opposite directions. I want to write this, but I don't. I have to write this, but I don't. The reader is my friend, but it's not all the time. And so I'm trying to, there's no other way for me to make that book. I have to take all those contradictions inside the writing. And it's not only me, it's, for me it's the definition of having been a victim of child abuse, is that I have a story that I'm not supposed to tell. I'm not supposed, it's forbidden. So it's like the social nature of that story. But also, when I decide to do it, in spite of everything, I fail. Because of what I have been through, there's no words to communicate what I have been through. So it's paradoxical in nature. There's no words that are going to be enough to go to the core, to go to the... Even if I say darkness, I don't like this, because it's not dark. It's not dark, and it's not dark. It's something else. It's pain, but it's not pain. And well, I think it's the question of nonfiction. The thing is that it's only my second book of nonfiction, and maybe I discover this. It's impossible to say what is. It's impossible to describe the real. So I think it was interesting to make it visible, that this effort is going around something that is unattainable.
Maybe now is a good point, since we're talking about visible and the invisible and possible luminosity and darkness, for you to read a bit from that section about Woolf, because we are so close to Hyde Park Gate, where the events that Woolf will be talking about in this section transpired.
It's also in the beginning of the book, because I'm using... In many parts of the book, there are things I don't want to say, so I find a way to say them without having to say in my name. So I use quotes from other writers, I use some articles from un journal, I can't find the word, from a newspaper from when I was a child. I use ways of telling the story that are different from the narrative. And I think it helps us to breathe also, because if I was only telling day after day the story of this little girl, it wouldn't be the book I want to write. I want the reader not to be submerged, not to be too involved in the story. I want the reader to be alert all the time. So I'm trying to build up some little situations or I'm not sure how to describe this, but well, I'll just read this. You'll see how it works. I remember places. The first place, a bedroom in darkness. I am woken by hands on me. Then his voice. When I open my eyes, he is speaking in a low voice. He doesn't stop talking. I don't want to wake my sister asleep in bed beside me. I was 7 when we lived in that apartment. I didn't understand what was happening, but from the first moment I sensed it was something serious and terrible. He was talking like a tamer speaks to a gentle but wild horse, a horse that needs to be held to stop it getting away. He was talking as if nothing in all this should scare me. And if I was scared, it was fine. He was there. He would help me get over my fear. But he too was afraid, and the fear enveloped us like a layer of night. Virginia Woolf, who was abused by her 2 half-brothers, describes the bizarre experience of those first bowing caresses in an autobiographical piece in which she's trying to find a relationship between her old memories and the way her still developing personality was being formed. I quote, "As I sat there, he began to explore my body. I can remember the feel of his hand going under my clothes, going firmly, steadily lower and lower. I remember how I hoped that he would stop, how I stiffened and wriggled, and his hand approached my private parts. But he did not stop. His hand explored my private parts too. Without calling it abuse, writing about it as simply one among several unpleasant experiences, she briefly analyzes, with a clarity notable for its candor and good sense, the emotions she felt. What would in the future come to be called traumatic shock. I quote again. I remember resenting, disliking it. What is the word for so dumb and mixed a feeling? It must have been strong, since I still recall it. This seems to show that a feeling about certain parts of the body, how they must not be touched, how it is wrong to allow them to be touched, must be instinctive. It is a moment outside time, unbound from the course of history, so charged with absurdity and meaning that it eludes any attempt at narrative comprehension. I think it was the first time anyone ever touched me there, the first time I was lied to, and I knew without a shadow of doubt that I was being lied to. The first time I found myself in this dark land with no idea which way to turn, my senses alert. The first time that my impaired life, at its most intense, yet to me seemingly so fragile, was revealed to me in its luminous singularity.
Thank you.
Thank you.
It's such a beautiful piece of writing, and obviously beautifully translated by Natasha, who I think you worked with, pretty closely. I wanted to ask, maybe before we open it up to the room, about this relationship between beauty and horror, between beautiful writing, fine writing, I think you say at one point, and what Wolf is describing here, what you're describing in your book. What kind of tension does that have for you?
Yes, this is very strange, because I don't want to... It's also very contradictory, because I don't want to use that experience to make something beautiful. I don't want to aestheticize the horror. I want the reader to be conscious all the time that it is horror. It's not something that we can process. I don't want us to be able to use this as a material to make something interesting or to make art. And at the same time, what can I make of it if it's not art? So what I need to do is to have a different definition of art. Art not being something that uses life to make beautiful stuff, but art like a tool that I use to dissect life, as a knife, as something that I use to not only understand, but to get to a place of life where I cannot go if I don't have art. And it is strange, because I have to change my opinion. In the beginning of the book, I always tell myself, don't be too stylish. This is a testimony, this is a memoir. I want to use that format. I want to not to polish too much the story, because I want the reader to feel, first and foremost, that it's not fiction. I don't want you to forget at any moment and to get carried away by the story. But if it's not art, then I don't want to do it. I don't want to just to use this experience as I don't know, an example of something that happened. I want more. So it's always very paradoxical. I think I ask the reader to make herself a definition of this book and of the genre that has been making up in front of her eyes, but also of what she expects from art. And I try not to impose anything on the reader. It's your decision, after all. If you decide in the end if it was worth it. The reading and all this energy and all this this questioning. And I'm challenging the reader all the time with this, and I hope it's worth it.
I can tell everyone here that it was absolutely worth it. Are there questions? Because I can just keep talking if you guys are shy. Oh no, there's a hand back there. Is there a mic coming around? Oh yeah, okay.
Thank you so much for sharing your story. It felt very special to be able to read it. I had a question about your process for writing this book, maybe. Is it something that you started writing, the facts first? Like, this is what I remember happened, or this is what I want to share with my readers? And then kind of like step back and took it, because it's a very unusual way of writing, especially for like a non-fiction or like a memoir. So I would love to hear more about that.
No, I think the structure of the book, but in all my books, in every genre, in fiction also, I'm someone who likes architecture and structures. So I knew how, I didn't know everything, but I knew that what was interesting for me was to weave different ways of telling that same story. So I knew I had, I'm going to try to tell this in a realistic way. I have the facts. But I can use literary criticism and use how in literature it has been told, it has been worked on by other writers, not only Lolita, but also it's everywhere in our culture. And I also had the idea that I was going to use the story told by other points of view. So I have my mother's point of view, the point of view of a journalist who has been in the trial. I have the point of view of my friends and family. I have the point of view of the little girl that I was, and of the woman who became a mother. So I knew I had all these different ways, all these different perspectives, and that what was making the book interesting for me is that I could decide when and how I was going to use those narrative lines. And the facts, they're so... It's non-fiction, so I can just go back and pull the facts when I need them. But it really was a project that was built from the beginning on this, the form. It made the whole thing.
Okay, another couple.
Thank you. Thank you so much for this book. It's incredibly powerful. One of the parts of the book that stayed with me a lot was when you talk about the consequences for children who then become adults, victims, and you have this fine line of talking about how, well, the systemic, statistical effects that it can have, but also not letting that define you as an experience. And and I was just wondering if you, what impact you were hoping that this book had on society, and you talked a bit about that with triggering conversations, starting conversations, but I think it's had an incredible impact already, and I was just wondering if you wanted to say a bit more about that too.
Thanks you. No, I had no idea what kind of impact. I was just so focused on making the best book. My plan, my motivation, and I was not planning any kind of impact. And it's a wonderful consequence, and it's beautiful that it happened. But my ambition was to make an interesting book. And I didn't start writing thinking, oh, I'm going to write this to protect children or to make people conscious of the widespread violence against children or to have an impact on society. Not at all. I was just trying my best to create something that had not been done before. So the impact is a complete surprise. And it is nice, it is interesting. And I think it's interesting also to reflect on this, on how sometimes being truly yourself and being only focused on your art, it has an impact. Not because you plan to have an impact, but because you've been very, very deep into what you could do. So, I wanted to be honest, and I wanted to write this book from the point of view, not of the girl, but about the point of view of the adult that I am now. And so all those things that the simple story would end up at the trial, at the middle of the book. He confesses and he gets 9 years of jail, and end of the story. But my plan was to explore the complexity of all this. And I know there's no end to this story. So the consequences on the adult that I became, and on people in general who have been victims of sexual violence in their childhood, it's also half of the book. Half of the book is not about the horrible story, because we've done it. We are going to go to dig deeper. And the very strange consequences are part of this exploration. So, thank you.
There's two profoundly impactful things in this book. That one is that you say that one doesn't heal, and from that, and it was profoundly alleviating from the pressure and the stress of healing, having to move on and having to get over it, you know, because I had never heard anyone say that nor write it. So it's crazy. Someone authorizes themselves to say, we don't heal from that. It was freeing, and there's this joy. It's so weird to talk about joy, but there's this joy in that, in saying, I don't have to work towards that anymore. But the second thing is the consequences. You briefly say what the consequences of abuse mean for a victim as an adult. In one part of the book, you talk about how, as a young adult, you were always after that higher degree of intensity in life and in your relationships, how you were dysregulated and always chasing that high. And the second one is, oh no, I forgot. I prepared my question in my head, but I forgot.
Don't worry.
No, the second one is you spy on the adults. At the swimming pool, you spy on the adults in the changing rooms with their kids. You spy on your partner even though you don't want to. There's so much truth, bravery, and my question is, does it go away? You know, the consequences. I wish you would have talked more also about those consequences as an adult.
Thank you. It's true that it's the first time I talk about this book in English, because it came out just now, but I've been touring in France for a year almost, talking about this book and talking with readers. And I know that some very specific things that I observed in my life and in the consequences that this traumatic event brought in my adult life, many people recognize this as things they've lived or thought and never saw in words. So it's interesting because I did this because I'm a fiction writer. And when you write fiction, you know that you need very specific details to build up the relationship with the reader, to have the reader participate in the story. And I had no idea which place was going to ring a bell in someone or sound strange for my reader. I just tried to observe very intensely, because that's what I can do. That's the only thing I can do. I can observe and then bring this back and put words on it. So it's true that many things that I say here, they're true for so many people. And it's things that I've heard from other victims, the hypervigilance. What you said, it even has a name. Many of those behaviors, they have names. Because you've been victim of trauma, you've been attacked by something unpredictable. So you're always ready for another trauma. And you're always spying on people because you have no idea who can be an aggressor and who is not. You can't trust anyone. It just seems so obvious, but it's true that we usually see those things in self-help books, and maybe they don't seem so real because it's a different way of telling the same thing. And I think just being very, very clear and very specific about what happened to me, and it's strange because I think it only happened to me, but then it comes up that it happened to so many different people. So something very strange about autobiography, which is new to me too, and I'm probably inventé l'eau chaude. What's the word in English? Something that is obvious to people who work on autobiographical stuff. When you tell something very personal and you think it's only about you, that's when it becomes universal. So, yes, and sometimes some very, very strange things. The fact that, for example, I had health problems, and I say in the second part of the book, people who don't know about child abuse believe that we have problems in our sexuality, but for most victims, we have problems for eating food, breathing well, going to school, talking to people, trusting someone. We have health problems. We have so many different kinds of consequences that have nothing to do with this seemingly. Because what has been done to a child who has been raped, it hasn't been done to his sexuality. It has been done to his soul, to his being. So it makes so much sense that the consequences go everywhere in his life. But it's true that this information is not shared much because we don't talk much about this. And the decision of writing this book, I had to go over the question of shame. I had to make the decision to write this book as if I was dead and no one was going to read it. Otherwise, I would never say those things, because most of the time we don't dare saying those things. And it's been a nice impact of the book that I had not planned. That because I'm brave enough to do it, then many readers feel dignified and they are brave also and share their own stories with other people. So it has been nice. Thanks for the question.
I think maybe we will wrap it up there. And Neige is going to be signing books, I assume, out there. There'll be lots of books for sale. And you can talk to Neige, one-on-one in a more
Thank you
intimate
so much.
setting.
Thank you for being patient.
Thank you.
I'm a slow speaker in English, but I'm even slower in French. So
I would like, thank you. So thank you, Neige and Lauren, for this very powerful conversation. So now you can obviously buy books in French and in English. I would like to remind you that Triste Tigre has been awarded of the Goncourt UK Choice last year. And tomorrow we will have Camille Laurence in conversation with Isabelle Lemarchand from La Librairie La Page here in the library. So we were very happy to have you tonight. This is the only date of Neige Sinno in the UK, and we hope to see you again. Thank you again, and thank you to Loïc for the technical side.